Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We thank you for joining us today, and I would like to start with just a couple of housekeeping measures. Number one, the call today is for members of the Georgia Municipal Association, other than those invited speakers. So I would like to ask, is there anyone on the call other than the members of the Georgia Municipal Association? If so, please announce yourself at this time. Are there any members of the media on the call? If so, please announce yourself at this time. And finally, this call is off the record. So again, good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar. Our goal today is to share with you all the latest guidance and updates on the American Rescue Plan Act, local fiscal recovery funds for the non-entitlement units of government and metro cities, and to provide some additional commentary on how your city can use these funds for infrastructure and other purposes. On Monday night, the Treasury Department issued updated guidance to assist states with their distribution of funds to non-entitlement units of government, NEUs, which are local governments typically serving a population under 50,000. Georgia has 515 cities in the NEU category who will receive their ARPA funds through the state pass-through. The Governor's Office of Planning and Budget has established a process based on the Treasury's new guidance to allocate and distribute funds, and much of our presentation today will focus on the steps all NEUs will take now to prepare for your city's allocation. We know that many of you have questions in mind as we begin this program, and I encourage everyone to please listen to the full presentation, and after our speakers present information, we request you please put your questions in the Q&A box. The presenters have put a lot of thought into their materials in anticipation of questions you might have, and they plan to incorporate that information into their remarks. Following all presentations, we will do our best to address all remaining questions live. Also, a recording of this event will be available tomorrow on GMA's ARPA webpage. And yes, we will share our presenter slides along with the recorded video with you all. To get us started, I'm delighted to welcome back Stephanie Beck, Deputy Director of the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, who joined us last week for GMA's initial webinar. Today, Stephanie and her team have prepared a video message featuring an overview by Jen Wade, OPB's grant manager, that highlights the information NEUs will need to access their ARPA funds. Stephanie will stay with us to help respond to your questions, and we appreciate her being with us today. Please also join me in welcoming Carol Barrett, the Legislative Director for Sustainability at the National League of Cities. As a member of the Federal Advocacy Team, Carolyn leads NLC's advocacy, regulatory, and policy efforts on energy and environmental issues, including water infrastructure and financing, water and air quality, climate change, energy efficiency, brownfields, solid and hazardous waste, and more. We're grateful for our partnership with NLC, and Carolyn, thank you for joining us today. While much of today's program will focus on updates related to cities in the NEU category with populations under 50,000, I want to briefly mention that GMA is continuing to work to get an understanding of the methodology used to calculate allocations for the 23 cities in the metropolitan group, in particular the 6 cities that saw the greatest disparity between the May allocations and the March estimates. GMA reached out to Georgia senators on Monday, and they've agreed to work to coordinate with Treasury to expedite a response to our request. Our goal at this point is to simply understand the calculations in the math, to get clarity and transparency on the methodology so that we can share that information with the impacted cities. As we learn more, we will share that with those city officials. Also want to note that on Friday at noon, the Treasury Department will hold an update briefing for NEU cities with additional information. Becky will include a link to register in the slides that she will review later in the program today. So without further ado, I'd like to call on Stephanie to get us started with OPB's overview for NEU cities on the new Treasury guidance, allocations, and what city officials should be doing to prepare to receive those funds. Stephanie, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Larry, and I believe we should have a PowerPoint presentation prepared if we can tee that up to walk us through that guidance.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jen Wade, the grant manager over at OPB. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We wanted to take this time to go over some of the newly released guidance on the NEU portion of the state and local fiscal recovery funds. Treasury has updated some of their guidance as far as the distribution to the NEUs, as well as a list of eligible NEUs and the formula that we were required to use for the calculations of those allocations. So today we're going to go over the eligibility and allocations, the funding availability, so the timing of the funding, the application process, what to do in the instance of a transfer of funds, and the reporting requirements. Treasury will make payments available to the states from the Fiscal Recovery Fund for distribution to NEUs in 2 tranches. The second tranche payment will be made no earlier than 12 months after the date on which the first tranche payment was made to the state. Funds will be made available to the NEUs within 30 days of receiving the funds, as long as the NEU has completed the application process. If a 30-day extension is requested for those that have not completed their application requirements outlined by Treasury, that date will vary. To date, OPB has not received the local portion of the state and local fiscal recovery funds. The American Rescue Plan requires states' allocations to NEUs to be based on the proportion of the population in the NEU as a share of a total population of all NEUs in the state. The requirement can be represented by the following formula. This is the formula that Treasury required us to use in the calculation of the allocation amounts. It's the total population of the NEU divided by total population of all eligible NEUs multiplied by the aggregate state NEU payment. Treasury compiled this list by using Census Bureau data dating back from 2019. Individual allocations for NEUs have been calculated per U.S. Treasury instructions. A full list of the eligible cities, their 2019 population required and sent by Treasury, can be found now on OPB's website. This is the website here, opb.georgia.gov/local-fiscal-recovery-fund. And if you look, I've actually included a screenshot here. If you look where the arrow is, there's a button that you click on that will take you straight to the PDF. Each NEU's Georgia Cares portal account will reflect the award amount in the allocation list. The application process for these funds will begin on June 7th. You will have until June 21st to submit your application. We encourage you to go in as soon as the application process begins and not to wait until the last minute. That way we have sufficient time on our end to make sure your applications are completed and have correct information, and then we also can process the vendor information on our side to get these funds to you in a timely manner. Details regarding this process will go out through our Georgia Cares portal. Terms and conditions and assurances that Treasury published on their site will go out via our Georgia Cares portal as well to the assigned designee for electronic signature. They will come together as one document. Please do not sign the PDF on the website that Treasury has published. In order for your application to be considered complete, this form must be signed and submitted by the application deadline via the portal. If you are one of the cities that still cannot find the original email, please contact our email at grants@opb.georgia.gov for a troubleshooting appointment as soon as possible to ensure that you guys can access the Georgia Cares portal. If you are emailing us at cares@opb.georgia.gov, that will still forward to the grants email box, but we have since changed the name to grants@opb.georgia.gov. For the application, you'll need a Georgia Cares portal account, your DUNS number, and a screenshot of the DUNS number to attach in the portal, your completed SAMS registration that you've already done on the front end, a completed and submitted vendor management form with a W-9 attached. The deadline for turning in the vendor management form with a W-9 is this Friday, May 28th at 5 p.m. So please ensure that you have all those to SAO so that they can process those requests. Please allow 2 weeks for SAO to process your vendor management form. They are having an influx of all of your vendor forms, so please allow 2 weeks for those to be processed. If you've already submitted a vendor management form and your current W-9 and didn't receive a confirmation, you do not need to resubmit. They do have an automatic response set up on their email, but I have heard from some of you that have not received that response back, and that's okay. As long as it didn't get kicked back to you, then you do not need to resubmit. If they are coming back to you from SAO and not saying undeliverable, please ensure that you have attached your W-9 to that. If it's getting kicked back for just errors, it's going to be usually because of an error on the form, or you didn't attach your W-9 when you submitted that. We've received a couple of questions regarding the bank accounts. For those of you who are trying to establish a new bank account for the funds, and because of the vendor management deadline being this Friday, we understand that that may be, a tough turnaround time. So just note that for those cities that are trying to create a new bank account that can't do so by the deadline for the vendor management form, you may use an existing bank account and then transfer the funds to another bank account. But bear in mind, it's the responsibility of the NEU to place the funds in the correct account after receiving funds. You will also need the total amount of your NEU budget, and in Treasury guidance, this is defined as the annual total operating budget, including general fund and other funds, in effect as of January 27th, 2020, or top line expenditure total, in case in which the NEU does not adopt a formal budget. Just so you know, please have that prepared to enter into the system, because you will be asked to enter this number on the application to verify that number so we can ensure that it meets the requirements for us on our end for the 75% cap for the budget. You will also need signed and submitted terms and conditions and assurances via the portal. I'll go over this a little bit later in the presentation, but that will be also part of your application process. So those will need to be signed and submitted back to us before your application can be considered complete, with all of those other aforementioned items on the list as well. If a city does not wish to draw down its funds, it may transfer the funds back to the state. As part of this process, the NEU must provide a signed notice to the state, which the state must then transmit to Treasury as part of its interim reporting we have due in August. This will be a part of the actual NEU process, so although you want to transfer your funds to the state, you will still need to access the portal and participate in the application process, which will then, for you, become a transfer and subsequent cancellation of the award. But please bear in mind, we do need you to go ahead and log into the application portal, and then from there, we can certify that you are transferring the funds back to the state if you do not wish to draw down. NEUs will not be required to report directly to OPB. Instead, NEUs will report directly to the U.S. Treasury. However, OPB will update forthcoming reporting guidance provided by Treasury on its website as it's released. NEU's first report is due to Treasury by October 31st, 2021. In addition to other reporting requirements that are forthcoming by the U.S. Treasury, NEUs will be asked to provide the following: their NEU recipient number, copy of signed award terms and condition agreements, and a copy of the signed assurances of compliance, and a copy of the actual budget documents validating the top line budget total provided to the state as a part of the request for funding. I'm sure there's still questions out there, but I also wanted just to bring up the resources that we have again and just mention that we will be updating our website every Friday to address any of the frequently asked questions, updated guidance, or anything surrounding this program with regards to the application process or any information that we need to get out. So please make a habit of going to our website, even post-award. We will be posting any guidance from Treasury on reporting as well. If you have any questions that you think of even after this presentation, please feel free to reach out to our team at grants@opb.georgia.gov. And if you have any issues with the vendor management form or have any questions about that, please email SAO at psvendor@sao.ga.gov.
Okay, Jen, thank you so much for that information. That's exactly what we were hoping to hear today, and we appreciate you getting everything together and especially providing the links for additional information and for cities to follow up. So we'll go on, and Carolyn Barrett is also on the line. She's going to be presenting some information about infrastructure. I know a lot of cities have had questions about water, sewer, stormwater, so Carolyn is the expert at the National League of Cities who works on these issues, and she's here today to share some information on those topics. Carolyn?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me join you today. Let me see here. So NLC has been working tirelessly over the past year to deliver on direct aid to every city, town, and village. And this work is not over. We are committed to providing our members with the resources and information they need to help communities recover and rebuild. I know we have a strong membership base here in Georgia, but if you are not a member of NLC, I encourage you to become one. So today I want to give a quick overview of the eligible uses for necessary water, wastewater, and stormwater projects. And then I have a few high-level Q&As that I'll run through. So the interim rule provides flexibility for many projects that would improve access to clean drinking water and improve wastewater and stormwater systems. The necessary investments include projects that are required to maintain a level of service that at least meet applicable health-based standards. And the rule aligns the eligible projects with those that are allowed under the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. And for the Clean Water SRF, there are 11 project categories that are eligible. And for Drinking Water SRF, there are 6 project categories that are eligible. And it's important to note that the planning and design for capital projects and water quality planning that's likely to result in a capital project is one of those eligible uses. So, with the approach of aligning with the state revolving funds, it's meant to support an expedited project identification. And it's meant to preserve the flexibility for local governments to direct funding to their own particular needs and priorities. So in addition to those projects under the state revolving fund categories, the Treasury guidance also mentions 3 areas for water and sewer projects that are eligible. The first is cybersecurity to protect water and sewer infrastructure, such as developing effective cybersecurity practices and measures at drinking water systems and publicly owned treatment works. And the second is climate change and resilience and green infrastructure investments that improve resilience to climate change. The guidance gives some examples such as rain gardens and measures to conserve and reuse energy, or reduce the energy consumption of public water treatment facilities. And finally, it allows for projects to address and replace lead service lines. So these are some of the top questions that we have been getting. And the first is that everyone wants to know, how do I know if my project is eligible? So the most important thing I can say here is that local governments and local leaders are the ones that make the determination as to whether your water infrastructure project is eligible. And the eligibility must align with the federal definitions and categories for the SRFs, and it does not require for your state project categories or definitions. We know each state may have different rules and guidelines, but we're looking at the federal eligibility criteria. And I know that GMA will send out these slides. These 2 links here for clean water and drinking water eligibility guides provide really good details on the types of projects that the funds can be used for in really specific examples. So second, do you need to have an SRF loan in order to use these projects for water infrastructure? And the answer is no. You don't need to have a current application or loan for this project, nor does the project have to be on an existing intended use plan or project priority list. This reference to SRF is simply to determine what the eligibility is. But I will say that these funds cannot be used for any expenses related to financing, such as interest, principal, servicing or redeeming notes, paying fees or issuance costs associated with new debt, nor can the funds be used to pay off fines or other settlement costs, including those associated with a consent decree. So third, can a local government transfer the funds to a water utility or water district? And the answer is yes. You may transfer the funds to other entities, including other levels of government or units of government or private entities. And this includes special purpose districts, such as fire, water, sewer, mosquito, etc. Question then becomes, what can the utility do with that money once you transfer it to them? Well, under the infrastructure provision, the utilities can use the funds to cover water, sewer, stormwater infrastructure investments as long as they are aligning with the SRF project eligibilities. However, if you transfer the funds to a water utility or water district under the revenue loss provision, those utilities can use it to cover unpaid bills. Alternatively, under the provision related to COVID impacts and the negative economic impacts, a local government can give direct assistance to households for utility assistance, among other things. So a couple of different options there when you're transferring funds. And the question is, what pot are you pulling it from to transfer it, and how will the utility use it? It is important to note that the infrastructure dollars, the infrastructure provision, cannot be used for revenue loss or homeowner assistance. It's only for actual infrastructure projects. Fourth, can the funds be used for other types of infrastructure projects? Or I mentioned that cybersecurity and climate change are eligible uses. Can we use the funds for cybersecurity and climate change that are not water sewer projects? Okay, so here, let's just say infrastructure spending is allowed in two categories. The first is the infrastructure provision, and the second is revenue loss. So under infrastructure, only cybersecurity and climate change projects that relate to water, sewer, and stormwater are allowed. However, under the revenue loss provision, gives recipients broad latitude to use the funds for the provision of government services to the extent of the revenue loss reduction amount. So this includes infrastructure and pay-go spending for building new infrastructure, including roads, modernization of cybersecurity, including hardware, software, protection of critical infrastructure, and a couple of other things that are listed in the guidance, but it does say including but not limited to. So under this revenue loss provision is where you would be able to use the funds for other types of infrastructure projects, again, only up to the amount of your actual revenue loss. And then finally, the question about NEPA. Does NEPA apply and or other federal statutes? And the question you need to ask yourself here is, are you using other federal dollars for your project, and what is the nature of your project and program? So ARPA does not exempt cities from federal laws that may apply otherwise to your projects or programs. For example, those that are funded with other federal dollars. And there are a number of federal programs like NEPA that get triggered by taking these federal grants or other funds. And the law would be project or program specific, and it would not apply if you don't have the federal funding or federal support. So the important thing here is that ARPA doesn't by itself trigger these laws, but by the nature of your project or program, it might. And so I know a specific question was asked about Davis-Bacon. So Davis-Bacon doesn't apply just because of ARPA. It's triggered when you enter into a contract, grant, or loan with the federal government. And it can also be triggered by being called out expressly in statute. So, for example, ARPA in 2009 did require projects to align with Davis-Bacon, but ARPA does not include that requirement. But when you think about the water infrastructure projects here, the Clean Water Act, and I'm not sure about the Safe Drinking Water Act, but the Clean Water Act does require Davis-Bacon when you have an SRF loan. So it gets a little bit tricky here because we're talking about SRF eligibility, and I think this is something we're going to be seeking clarification on. In terms of Buy America, this applies to surface transportation projects funded through Department of Transportation or Federal Transit Administration. So again, it wouldn't get triggered unless you have other federal dollars from that agency. And then the Brooks Act. This establishes procurement process by which architects and engineers are selected for contracts with federal design and construction agencies. So like Buy America and Davis-Bacon, it's triggered when the federal government will be contracting for these services. And so the requirements are passed through to other government agencies like cities and transportation agencies. There is not an additional condition here with ARPA, but again, it may be triggered. And I would also note that some states, I don't know about Georgia, has their own version of the Brooks Act. So a few of the things here in this category are ambiguous, and we're going to be asking Treasury for some clarification. But I think the big picture here is that ARPA by itself doesn't excuse or require some of these laws. It will really depend on the nature of your project and whether there are other federal dollars. So that's all I have. I'm going to turn it back to Becky, but happy to take any questions, I guess, at the appropriate time. Oh, wait a minute, one more thing, sorry. We can learn more. You can learn more about this. We're going to be diving into water infrastructure projects and eligibility, and really how to use green infrastructure and climate change as part of this at a brown bag on June 18th at 2 o'clock Eastern, and that link is the registration link. So I can put that in the chat along with those links to the eligibility guides, just so you have them now, but they are linked here in the slides. So with that, I will turn it to Becky and stop sharing.
Thank you, Carolyn. I did see a few questions in the Q&A for you, so we'll get to those in just a couple minutes, and we do want to leave some time for Q&A at the end. But Richie, are you able to share my slides?
Yes, ma'am. 2 seconds.
Okay, I just have a couple of slides that I wanted to mention to you, and a lot of the information has already been kind of touched on by Jen and Steph and Carolyn and some of the information that they shared, but we tried to put some information just in a short slide deck for you, and we will be sharing all these slides, as Larry mentioned. They'll be posted on our website just as soon as we can get the video uploaded tomorrow. We wanted to make sure that you are aware of certain key resources, as well as to the link to the Treasury presentation that's coming up on Friday that will have additional information for the NEUs. So as Richie gets this going, I'm just going to spend just a couple quick minutes here running through these slides. So, okay, so let's see, I think we might have the wrong slide deck here. I'll tell you what, let's just focus on the questions that we have right now. I'm going to share the links and the other slide presentation with you. It's only about 5 slides. It includes the links to information on the Drinking Water, Clean Water Act that Carolyn mentioned. It also includes the links to OPB website, all of the information that Jen referenced in the video and the slides that they presented, including the allocation amounts. Please check that OPB link that's in Jen's slide presentation as well as the GMA presentation. So right now, I guess we'll just go ahead and turn to the Q&A. And also keep in mind that just like our speakers have said before, we're all still trying to get our hands around this. It's a lot of information. Treasury has just put out some new guidance on the 25th, also linked in the slides that we'll be sharing with you later today. So we're learning this. We're getting refinements from Treasury, working with LC, with the Treasury Department, White House Intergovernmental Affairs. They're responding to our questions, but it will require some rolling guidance from Treasury. So if we're not able to answer your questions today, this information is still helpful. We need to know what you're asking so that we can feed all this information back to our partners and see if we can get you some answers. So we'll just start at the top of the Q&A and answer what we can. Do we need to include enterprise funds, electric, gas, telecom, et cetera, in our total budget information? So as Jen mentioned in her presentation, and Jen, you may want to go into a little bit of detail on this. Can y'all provide any clarification on what's to be included in general and other funds? That's included, that term, that definition is included in the interim final rule, but I don't know if we have received any clarification from Treasury on that, or if that's something that we need to wait on.
This is Stephanie at OPB, and I do not have any further clarification on what general and other funds means with regards to city governments. I know that when the state is looking at our general fund for the purposes of our revenue calculations, they referred us to how our general fund revenue is reported via the census, which would not include like some of our capital funds or other enterprise funds, et cetera. So that might be the guidance here as well, but I have not seen any further definition of what general and other funds would mean in the context of municipalities.
Okay, and I just got a text from Mike Wallace at NLC, who I texted this question to, and he thinks that that would be included along with sales taxes, which is the next question. When you said general and other funds, does that include SPOST? So Mike is saying that sales taxes would be, and he believes the enterprise funds would be. We will get clarification on that. GMA will be putting together definitions and clarification on this, because we know you need that information to determine your 75% amount and attest that. Sam, did you have?
Becky, I'd like
There's two different general funds that we're talking about. One is the 75%, that you're going, you're using your general fund and other funds, and then the other one is on the loss of revenue. You've got general revenue. So just be clear of which one we're referring to.
Yeah, and I think that is a distinction. But Becky, reading the Treasury guidance today, it does appear that it clearly says that general fund is not the total budget. So it does appear that it's intended to be your total budget is what you should submit, and that would determine what you're eligible for. But Pam is right at this point, and Stephanie was right. Because they use the census definition of utilities, those right now are not eligible for revenue replacement. There was a slide earlier that said that you can make your utility whole for back payments of customers, but if you had industries that closed and therefore it was revenue you never received, that is not eligible at this point. NLC and GMA have both made a request for reconsideration of Treasury to allow revenue replacement for water, sewer, and utilities. But at this point, it's kind of two different standards. Your total budget's what qualifies you for 75%. But revenue replacement is not eligible for enterprise type funds like water and sewer.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that. The next question, Stephanie, maybe you can take this one. When are terms and conditions due? I know that was in the presentation, but is that a bit that you can give us real quickly?
This is Jen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So terms and conditions will be sent out throughout that portal. I did get a question in the Q&A about that. Those will be sent out. Those are forthcoming. We just want to make sure that all those who have not received their original emails thus far get the customer support that they need to find that or to get that. So that way we know 100% that we'll get the portal stuff that we send out that goes to the POCs. So those have not been sent out yet, and they are forthcoming. And we will also, once we do that, we'll make sure that we update our website to say, terms and conditions have been sent out, and here's where we are at in the application process.
Question: can funds be used to rebuild the wastewater treatment plant dam? And can you purchase generators for backup power at the plant and a well?
I was just doing a word search through the Clean Water SRF guide, And dam shows up one time and for dam removal. So that is the only thing that is referenced in dams in the SRF guide. So that's all I would say on that.
How about generators for backup power at the plant and a well?
Well, while you're looking for that, we can move on. So let's talk about that for the revenue loss. So you're able to use those funds to build roads and sidewalks and trails?
Well, I think there's still a question on revenue loss. Clearly, we've asked that question, as is revenue loss essentially funds of the city to use as they choose. One answer we've gotten is that not for ineligible uses. So there's three categories of ineligible uses. So even revenue loss can't be used for pensions, for instance. So that is clear. I think if you're looking to do capital expenditures that aren't those approved, such as water, sewer, broadband, stormwater, the best option is to use a qualified census tract designation, because expenses are presumed eligible in those census tracts. And I specifically asked the question, if you had a park in a qualified census tract, and that's a disproportionately affected population, could you invest in improving that park and replace equipment and bring it up to standard? And the answer was yes, because it's in a qualified census tract. So I think that would be a more appropriate way for you to look at how to do capital that's not in one of the approved categories, is to look at your qualified census tracts.
Can we use public safety dollars claimed under CARES Act for ARPA also? And so there is some differences in the definition now. CARES Act, you could use all their salaries with public safety.
Yeah, CARES Act funds were to replenish your funds that you use for eligible expenditures. So once the state of Georgia provided CARES Act, which was a reimbursement base, that's your money to use in any way that's legal within your charter and within your city. So CARES Act funding was reimbursement, and it became your money at the time you received it.
But if now you can't use it just to pay all public safety, it has to be they have to be used for the COVID related.
That's right. You cannot merely upload public safety payroll under the ARPA. It is more specific. You've got to make the direct relationship that is COVID related, and only those positions that would be. So it is a little bit of a higher standard. Public safety is still an eligible use, but it's not merely uploading payroll. It's a little more detailed. You got to prove it.
We do encourage cities to use documentation and make sure to keep track of that information for how you arrived at your determination that your project is eligible. The next question, can the funds be used to pay for the penalties assessed and or monthly sewer cost from other municipalities that charge to treat our wastewater?
I've not seen anyone ask that question yet, but my initial opinion would be no. Looking at other similar factors, such as some that were shown earlier, you can't use it for fines, you can't use it for settlements, you can't use it for legal fees. I think it would be logical to assume in that case that you would not be able to use it for late fees.
The next question, I'm not sure I understand this. When you say the initial email, you're referring to an email sent out with the initial CARES Act funding or assist email. So OPB sent out emails recently requesting certain documentation that you'll need to submit as soon as possible to make sure you get that pre-application process started. If you haven't received that email, please let me or Pam or Terrell know, and we will make sure we'll work with OPB. They've done a tremendous job of trying to get all this information out to all the cities, so we'll get you something as soon as possible. It doesn't take very long to send the information back, but you do have to have that vendor management form and return back to the state accounting office just as soon as possible.
Yeah, and Becky, I think one thing that is very important so that we do not have confusion is not to use the term CARES Act. That was a program last year that has expired and is over. Stephanie or Jen, can you say that definition or that email came from Grant Cares? Did it not? But we just need to be specific that you won't be receiving things based on CARES Act, and CARES Act really has nothing to do with American Rescue Plan.
Hey, Larry, this is Jen. That is correct. The portal may be a little bit confusing for everyone, but just to clarify, it's Georgia Cares is the portal in which OPB uses to initiate the emails and any kind of communications and the application process for funding. So ARP is a completely separate grant program. So yes, please don't confuse the two. This going forward, everything is the American Rescue Plan.
So should we adjust the total budget of all funds to deduct interfund transfers? And I'm not sure I understand where you're going with that, Melody.
Well, I think your budget would already incorporate whatever your adopted budget is, has intrafund transfers, transfers in, transfers out. So your adopted budget is your adopted budget. I would not think you would deduct anything.
And we missed one question here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Can a paper or PDF copy of the application be provided to assist with preparing for the online application?
Okay. The terms will be provided. You cannot provide us a PDF copy separately. It needs to go through the portal application. So when we send out the email that'll have the terms and conditions on it, we need you to DocuSign it through there to return it to us. But I believe that it is just a standard terms and conditions that the Treasury is sending out for everybody to complete. So I'll look and see if that's something that we could provide a reference copy on the website or something like that for folks to look at. But it's very important that you complete the actual signing and sending it back to us process through the portal email so that we have the record that it's there. We can't accept it as just a physical signed copy separately.
And the question is, an NEU a non-entitlement community? NEU stands for a non-entitlement unit of government, which is all those except the metropolitan and entitlement one. So it's all but 26. It's 515 in Georgia. Pam, I think there was a question above that. Do we have to have a CARES Act portal account first, then submit vendor form?
You do not have to have that. You can go. Please go ahead and submit the vendor form. If you do not have the CARES portal account right now, just because you're missing that email, go ahead and submit that vendor form. That's going to take probably the longest as far as the process goes. So go ahead and get that done, and please reach out to us via that email, and my team will get to you very efficiently and get that remedy for you.
And can cities give a water sewer fund credit on customer bills rather than issuing checks to citizens?
Carolyn, I was going to say, based on your presentation earlier, you said it is legal to make a transfer of the funds to a utility account. That would appear to me to be that the utility could make itself whole and not have to cut a check to a customer who would turn around and cut a check back to the utility. Is that correct?
Correct. And I think the distinction there is that the local government receives the money. They can do
right.
Cash to a household for utility and other things from the local government. The local government can transfer it to the utility, and the utility would just do it through the billing system.
Right. So
those are kind of two separate things there. Yeah.
So what is the date of that original email, and where did it originate from? So that was last Monday, wasn't it, Becky?
I think it was May 11th or May 12th. If you received it, just go ahead and let me know. Just shoot me an email, and we will communicate that to the OPB team, and we'll get that to you as quickly as possible.
The next question, did you state that you have to have a separate account for these funds? Now, obviously, you know, if they're doing fund accounting, they really don't. But if they don't do fund accounting, obviously they have to have a separate account. And I know some smaller cities have had a challenge trying to set up a new account and all that. But you heard, I think they said you can transfer those funds over into another account once you do set up another account, if that's your prerogative.
They are considered grant funds, and that should be taken into consideration. You might want to consult with your auditor or a finance professional.
Can we use it to establish a police department? I wouldn't think so.
I don't think so. I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah. I don't know how are all public safety personnel automatically considered to be COVID-19 related?
I think we've answered that. It does not appear that is the language used. It says you must provide evidence that their service. So in other words, people that were working in an office at all times, I doubt you could convince that would be COVID related when you read the intent of it. So I don't think you can automatically assume everyone, 100% of public safety payroll is eligible.
I've been Okay, anybody that has gotten the email reference, please just email us. Can we use it to, okay, we got that one. Can ARPA funds be used for public safety building?
So just remember, you got to
Building
be
has
able to think those statements in the act about it's got to be able to the health care or the COVID related. I just don't know if you could do that.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that too, but there is an infrastructure package that's in the works in Congress. They're trying to work on a bipartisan bill now. So it's possible that additional infrastructure, including things like roads and sidewalks and parks and some of the other things that have been asked about today, including city buildings, could be considered eligible under the infrastructure bill. Okay, we'll take a couple more in the time we have left. Fines and forfeitures that we use to operate our police department were greatly reduced due to COVID. Did I hear you say the reduction in revenues for fines is not eligible? So there is a step-by-step process that you would need to take to determine revenue loss. We went over that in the last Wednesday's webinar, and if you'll look back at the slides on GMA's website, there's a step-by-step process, and also NLC has developed a really good tool that you can look at online to calculate your revenue loss. So you would need to look at that. It's not by fund. You'll have to look at the total budget, and that's what Pam was alluding to earlier, and Larry was talking about earlier about what can be used in that. But you can't just simply look at one fund and look at the reductions in that. You need to look at your total operations and use that. And we'll be happy to walk you through the example, but it's available on our website.
And we put it in their newsletter that we sent out today, that tool.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you can look at it there too.
Can GMA advocate for cities being able to use the revenue replacement in any way necessary? Mayor, the intent of the bill was really to help those that were most affected by the pandemic, to assist with public health economic issues associated with the pandemic. This is a relief bill. It's the last relief bill that Congress is going to pass. So we did provide advocacy up front to try to make sure we could get a lot of flexibility, and that flexibility has been built into it. I don't know if we'd be able at this point to ask for complete ability to use it however we wanted to, but there are going to be some other revenues coming down the pipe soon in infrastructure that would allow us to do some things, and hopefully, this revenue will be very helpful to your city to be able to make up for stabilize some operations issues that you have with the city.
And Becky, in addition to that, I think it's important to understand that Treasury can issue guidance, Treasury can issue interpretation, and oftentimes that's done to give more flexibility. But Treasury cannot change an act of Congress. So Congress intentionally put some guardrails on prohibited uses. So I don't think there's a way to advocate to change an act of Congress. It would merely be to work with Treasury to make a justification of why we think something would be an eligible use, or to change the way they're interpreting that, like we're trying to do with utility revenue, to say that it's not logical that utility revenue is not available for reimbursement. You're using the entire budget to qualify for 75%, and it is a source of revenue like other sources of revenue. So we're working on their interpretation in that case to give you more freedom and flexibility.
Okay, this one looks like it might be for you, Carolyn. Could the funds be used to purchase radio reading type equipment to improve reading the water sewer meters in a city?
I was trying to look that one up, and another question that was about billing upgrades. So I don't have an answer right off the top of my head, but I just emphasize again, there's a lot of good examples in those two SRF guides that I put in, and a word search pulls up a lot of information. So I emphasize that those two documents should be your go-to, because that will be where you will find the clearest thing. There was a question earlier about the dams, and there is something about dams in there, so you can do a word search on that as well. So that is one of the allowable.
And GMA is going to be taking this Q&A. We can save a copy of the Q&A, and anything we can't answer live right now. We're going to go back through the guidance with the fine-tooth comments that we can answer. If we can't answer it, then we're going to get with Treasury and try to get some clarification.
What negative social economical impacts do you suggest can be addressed with the funding? So housing could be one. I think that you could use funds to help in that area. I would think even you could probably use it for dilapidated. Could you? What do you think, Larry?
I do. In fact, I have read that in a qualified census tract, if housing and substandard housing was an issue, or affordable housing, workforce housing, you could essentially contract with a nonprofit or others to actually create housing and use the funds for that. So that is a very good example, Pam, of an eligibility to address socioeconomic impacts.
And that's what the money's really all about, is helping the communities to start looking at those kind of areas. Helping those. I think we answered the ones about upgrades to police department.
Yeah, Pam, I would like to try and answer the one about one of the allowable uses is a municipality to provide up to $13 per hour above regular wages for essential workers. Is there a definition of essential workers? And also there's inquiring about a bonus. We've had that come up. What we've recommended the city do to protect itself is to calculate that amount of money. It's logical if it's back to January 27th of last year, which is eligible, that you can't go back and issue paychecks, a year and a half ago. So it would have to be in the form of a bonus. But what we recommended, calculate that number of hours. It may be 200 hours, and it may be at $13 an hour, and that may be $5,000. And if you want to give everybody a $3,000 bonus, that clearly would be legal. And you would have a calculation to demonstrate that it did not exceed the 13 hours per hour for that employee. So yes, I do think essential, there's some level of interpretation for you to make that determination. But I think that we're encouraging cities, public safety, public works are a lot of essential. Frontline workers are essential. Customer facing positions are essential. So I think that gives you a lot of latitude in determining what is essential. Anything that required you to maintain in order to keep your doors open and serve your citizens and your customers during the pandemic, I think you would make a logical argument that was essential.
Hey, Larry, I am able to open my slides now if you want me to take just a second to run through.
Yeah, I do, because there's a couple of things I think that will answer questions in your slides, Becky, so please do that.
I apologize, everybody, and appreciate you bearing with me. We had a random power outage at my house right as we were getting started with this event. Hang on just a second, and I'll see if I can get my slideshow start. Okay, can everyone see my screen now?
While you're looking for that, Becky, yes, there's a questions about authorities and component units and nonprofits. They are all eligible depending on the use. So for instance, if you have an airport and they had revenue losses, that would be eligible for revenue replacement, or development authorities and economic development, or downtown authorities that may have had a loss of revenue. Those are eligible entities for use of funding.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure everybody had seen our website, www.gacities.com/ARPA. The link to the Treasury webinar for NEUs is here. We will share these right after this program. You can email me, or they will be up on our website tomorrow afternoon. Please remember that at our district meeting starting next Tuesday, we're also going to share updated information at each one of these district meetings, and you can register on our website at this link that's provided here. Be sure to follow OPB steps that were presented in the video slides earlier, and check the OPB website. And DMA is going to be working on fact sheets and other sort of documents that will help you get through this. I also wanted to mention NLC has put together some excellent fact sheets that sort of parse out the information that's in the interim final rule. Please take a look at these, because I think they'll answer a lot of the questions that have come up today. They talk about how you can use the funds for different eligible categories. And then that tool that I mentioned, the revenue loss calculator, you can link to it here. And just like Pam said, this stuff was included in the email alert, the COVID email alert that GMA sent out today. Link to the Treasury website is here, and OPB's web page is here. So really, main information that I wanted to share. So I believe that's everything.
Okay, there was a question about, can the funds be used to reduce millage rates? And the answer to that is no. That is clearly a prohibited use. Well, Becky, if that's everything, I want to take a moment to thank all of you for your time and attention today. We hope this has been beneficial to you. As you all see and hear, we are all learning this and getting smarter together. We're going to continue to answer your questions. We're going to answer all the questions, even those that we're not able to get to today on the call. You'll see those on our website. And we're also going to continue to communicate with Treasury and other agencies to get answers to your questions as we all go forward. Remember, all the way up until July, Treasury has said they will be making amendments and changes and interpretations and giving additional guidance. So submit your questions. Let us submit those and see how we can help you. And the guidance will continue to come and evolve over these next several months. We also want to mention that we'll be having district meetings coming up in June, where we'll be also giving the most up-to-date information on the American Rescue Plan. So try and attend the district meetings in your area. We'll have additional webinars and also continue with email and electronic notifications. And be sure to stay and continue to look at our website where we'll update things as they occur. So thank you for your time, and I hope all of you have a good rest of your afternoon.